The stars above Earth were silent, but beneath the peaceful surface, something stirred. Commander Elias Stone stood at the edge of the observation deck, his eyes fixed on the dark expanse of space. The Vectar Empire had long controlled the galaxy, an iron fist in the form of alien invaders who had crushed any race that dared to defy them. Human history had been marked by a constant struggle for survival, and though Earth had been the last planet to be conquered, it had not been spared the cruelty of their reign. They had shackled humanity, keeping them in chains of fear, manipulation, and false promises. For years, humans had been oppressed, their future stripped away, their will slowly broken. The Vectar didn't care that humanity had once been powerful. The Vectar didn't care about their culture or their history. To them, humans were nothing but another species to dominate, another race to control. Their ships, dark and ominous, had become a constant presence in the skies, their patrols ensuring that no one would dare rise up against them. Elias had seen it all, the oppression, the pain, and the fear in the eyes of his people. He had lost friends and family to the Vectar's unyielding grip, but what the Vectar didn't know was that humanity was different from all the other races they had conquered. Human spirit was stubborn, resistant, and unwilling to yield. Elias had spent years in the shadows, quietly assembling a resistance. It was small at first, just whispers in the dark, but it had grown over time. Slowly, but surely, humans were starting to fight back. Tonight, Elias was not alone in his thoughts. The room behind him buzzed with activity. His team, survivors of past battles, seasoned warriors, and brilliant strategists, were all working tirelessly to plan their next move. They had one chance to turn the tide. The Vectar would not show mercy. Elias knew that, but he also knew they could never break humanity. Not now, not after everything they had lost. "Commander, the scans are complete," a voice called out behind him. It was Lieutenant Harper, one of the most skilled tacticians Elias had ever met. She stepped forward, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the holographic map before her. "The Vectar fleet is in orbit around Gorkon. It's not far from Earth. If they launch their attack, Earth will be the next target." Elias nodded, his mind racing. The Vectar had always kept their eyes on Earth, the last independent planet in the galaxy. They had never truly stopped planning its conquest, but Elias had hoped, he had prayed, that they would focus their attention elsewhere. But now, the attack was imminent. The countdown had begun. "We can't wait for them to come to us," Elias said quietly. "We need to hit them first. We have one chance, and we can't afford to fail." The room fell into a heavy silence as everyone absorbed the weight of his words. There was no turning back. The time for hiding was over. Earth had been the last safe haven, but that was no longer true. Humanity's survival depended on the choices they made in the coming hours. Elias turned to his team, his voice firm. "We strike tonight. We use everything we've got. The Vectar think they have us in their grasp. Let's show them they were wrong." Harper looked at him, then nodded. "I've got a plan. It's risky, but it might just work." She paused for a moment, then added, "We've been tracking their communications. There's a vulnerability in their network. If we can get close enough, we can send out a message to every Vectar soldier, every officer. We expose their lies. The galaxy needs to know the truth." Elias's heart pounded in his chest. The truth. It had always been the most powerful weapon. The Vectar had ruled through deception, making the galaxy believe they were invincible. But all it took was one spark to ignite a fire. If they could reveal the truth, if they could expose the Vectar for the manipulators they were, the people would rise up. The galaxy would be shaken to its core. "Then we do it," Elias said, his voice steady. "We strike fast, hit hard, and make sure they can't ignore us." The plan was set in motion. The resistance fighters would board their ships, silent and swift, striking at the heart of the Vectar fleet. The first target was a small supply depot in the Gorkon system, located near the Vectar's main base. If they could cripple their logistics, it would slow the Vectar down long enough for humanity to organize. But there was one more thing. The final piece of the puzzle. Elias had discovered something hidden deep within the Vectar's technology, a secret they had buried for centuries. There was an ancient device, an artifact, that could disable their entire fleet. The Vectar thought it was lost to time, but it had been found again, and humanity had it. If they could get their hands on it, they would be able to cripple the Empire's power. It was a risk, but it was their only chance. As the Resistance ships prepared to launch, Elias's thoughts drifted back to Earth. The people were scared. They were uncertain. But deep inside, he could feel it. A flicker of hope, a spark of rebellion. Humanity had endured too much, lost too much, to simply lay down and accept defeat. They had been shackled by chains for too long, but now, the time had come to break them. "Prepare for launch," Elias ordered, his voice unwavering. The time had come. The fleet lifted off in silence, the stars before them seemingly endless. But behind them, on the surface of Earth, the people began to stir. The Resistance's broadcast, the one that had exposed the truth about the Vectar, had spread across the planet. It was only a matter of time before others would rise up, inspired by the message of hope. But for now, it was up to the fighters in the fleet to make the first strike. The silence of space was broken by the hum of the engines. The Resistance ships moved forward, breaking through the atmosphere and into the vastness of the galaxy. As they neared the Vectar fleet, the stakes were clear. It was no longer just about survival. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not be broken. They would never submit to tyranny. They were ready to fight back. And so, the war began, not just for Earth, but for the future of the entire galaxy. As the first shot was fired, the story of humanity's struggle to break free from the chains of oppression had begun. And there would be no turning back. But the question remained, would they succeed, or would the Vectar crush them before they could ever make their mark on the galaxy? The clock was ticking, the galaxy was watching, and the future of humanity was at stake. The hum of the engines reverberated through the hull of the ship, sending a vibration up Elias's spine as he stood at the command center, eyes fixed on the dark expanse of space outside. The fleet was on the move, racing toward their first target. But even in the midst of the operation, Elias couldn't shake the feeling of dread gnawing at the pit of his stomach. The plan was risky, and the stakes were higher than ever before. The Vectar had long believed they were untouchable. Their ships were massive, and their technology far superior to anything humanity had ever known. But the Resistance had managed to uncover one of their biggest weaknesses, a vulnerability that, if exploited, could bring the whole Empire to its knees. It was a weapon, one powerful enough to cause a ripple in the fabric of the Vectar's control over the galaxy. But it came with a price. Elias clenched his fists, staring at the star map that hovered before him. The fleet of Resistance ships moved in a tight formation, heading toward the Gorkan system. The target was a small, seemingly insignificant Vectar supply depot. An easy enough target on paper, but the Vectar were far from foolish. They had likely anticipated an attack of some kind. Elias knew that, once they arrived, they would face opposition like nothing they had seen before. "Commander, we're approaching the target zone." Harper's voice crackled over the comms, snapping Elias back to the present. "The Vectar fleet has been detected nearby. We don't have much time." Elias nodded, his eyes narrowing. "Prepare for deployment. We strike hard, hit fast, and get out before they can retaliate." He turned to his crew, his team of seasoned warriors, each of them knowing what was at stake. They were more than just soldiers. They were humanity's last hope. The Vectar had crushed countless civilizations, but they had underestimated the resolve of humanity. They had no idea what they were up against. Harper's voice came through again. "We've got incoming ships. Looks like they're trying to intercept us before we reach the depot." "Deploy the decoys," Elias ordered. "Split the fleet. We can't afford to lose time." The plan had been set in motion for weeks. The decoys were a set of specialized drones, designed to mimic the signature of a larger fleet. By sending them out ahead of the main force, they hoped to draw the Vectar's attention and pull them away from the actual attack. It was a dangerous move, but it would give the resistance just enough time to reach the depot. As the decoys were launched into space, Elias watched the main fleet shift, breaking off into smaller, more agile groups. The air was thick with anticipation. The resistance knew that this was only the beginning. If they failed here, humanity's hope would be crushed before it could even ignite. Suddenly, the screen flashed red. The Vectar had detected the decoys and were now closing in on their position. But the resistance ships had already changed course, slipping past the Vectar fleet like shadows in the night. Elias's pulse quickened as they made their way toward the depot. "Enemy fleet is moving away," Harper reported, her voice calm but focused. "We've got the opening we need." "Stay sharp," Elias warned. "This is just the beginning." The resistance ships approached the Gorkan system with caution, slipping through the shadows of space. The depot was hidden within the asteroid belt, surrounded by debris that the Vectar had used to disguise it. It was a perfect location, difficult to detect, but not impenetrable. Thanks to years of careful planning and reconnaissance, the resistance knew exactly where to strike. Elias's fingers hovered over the controls as he ordered the fleet into position. They were close now. The Vectar would never expect a strike so sudden, so calculated. But humanity had learned from their enemies. They had adapted. And now, they would strike with everything they had. The signal came through. The fleet was in position. The moment had arrived. "Lock on targets," Elias ordered. "Prepare to launch." The countdown began. 10 seconds. The hum of energy building in the ship's systems was deafening. The weapons were primed, and the fleet was ready to unleash hell. Elias's eyes flicked over the monitors, watching as the resistance ships adjusted their trajectories. 5 seconds. The Vectar were still unaware. The decoys had worked. They were focused on the false threat, completely oblivious to the real danger that lay in wait. Elias's fingers tightened on the control panel. This was their only shot. They had to make it count. 3 seconds. "Launch," Elias barked. In an instant, the resistance fleet erupted into action. Laser blasts shot out from the ships, tearing through the asteroid field and striking the Vectar depot. The explosions rocked the space around them, sending shockwaves through the surrounding asteroids. The Vectar had been caught off guard. Their defenses, not prepared for such an assault, were shattered within seconds. "Direct hit," Harper shouted, her voice filled with urgency. "We've breached their core." The depot structure began to collapse, the once thriving supply hub now nothing more than a burning wreck. The resistance had done what they came for: cripple the Vectar's resources, disrupt their flow of supplies, and give humanity a glimmer of hope. But Elias knew the victory was only temporary. The Vectar would retaliate quickly. They would come for Earth. And this time, they would be prepared. "We've got incoming," another officer reported. "Vectar reinforcements are en route. They're bringing everything they have." "Prepare for retreat," Elias ordered. "We've done what we needed to do. Get to the extraction point, now." The fleet pulled back, cutting through the space around them as the Vectar ships arrived, furious and determined. But the resistance ships were faster, their maneuverability giving them the edge as they disappeared into the darkness of space. For now, humanity had made its stand. They had struck a blow against the Vectar. But the battle was far from over. The Vectar were coming, and they would not be merciful. Elias knew they had only delayed the inevitable, but that didn't matter now. The first step had been taken. The resistance had made its move. The fight for the galaxy had begun. As the fleet moved toward Earth, Elias's mind raced. The Vectar would be coming. But humanity was ready. They had a weapon, a secret, something the Vectar couldn't have prepared for. And soon, The galaxy would know that humanity was not just another race to be crushed. They would not be shackled. They would fight. They would win. And the Vectar Empire would fall. The stars were burning behind them as the Resistance fleet returned to Earth. The strike on the Vectar depot had sent a shockwave through the Empire. It wasn't just a physical attack. It was a message. Humanity was not going to die quietly. They were not afraid anymore. But Elias Stone knew the victory had also triggered something worse. The Vectar would now see humans as a true threat. And when the Vectar felt threatened, they destroyed without mercy. Inside the underground command base, deep beneath the surface of Earth, the mood was tense. Elias and his team were reviewing the data collected during the attack. They had destroyed the depot, yes, but more importantly, they had captured a data crystal, something the Vectar had hidden in one of their command nodes. The crystal contained something ancient, something even the Empire had kept secret from its own people. It's not just maps or fleet movements, Harper said as she examined the data. It's about something they fear, something that was lost long ago. Her voice was serious, her face pale. Elias leaned closer. What is it? Harper took a breath. It's called the Flame Protocol. It's a weapon, Commander. Or at least, the blueprint for one. Built by a civilization the Vectar destroyed long before they reached Earth. This weapon, if we can understand it, could destroy their fleet in one strike. The room went silent. They all knew the Vectar were strong because of their technology. Their ships were advanced, fast, and protected by shields that no known weapon could break. But this Flame Protocol had been designed before the Vectar became the Empire, a forgotten weapon built by a race that had seen the danger before anyone else. Can we build it? Elias asked. Harper hesitated. Not yet, but we might not have to. There's more. The original weapon is still out there, hidden, on a dead planet called Oraka Prime. Elias looked at the map. Oraka Prime had been wiped from the records. Not even the Vectar acknowledged its existence anymore. But now, thanks to the crystal, the truth was in their hands. The last hope of freedom might be buried on a lost world. We go after it, Elias said without hesitation. We don't have a choice. So the plan began. They would split the Resistance fleet. One half would stay and defend Earth, in case the Vectar returned. The other half, Elias's team, would make the dangerous journey to Oraka Prime. No one knew what waited there. It could be a trap, or it could be salvation. The journey was long. The system around Oraka Prime was unstable. There were meteor storms, radiation belts, and even strange energy waves that messed with their instruments. But the deeper they went, the more they saw signs of something old. Structures floating in space. Broken satellites with writing in unknown languages. It was clear now. This planet had once been part of a massive civilization. When they finally reached Oraka Prime, the surface was nothing but ash and ruins. The ground was cracked, the sky filled with dust. But underneath, buried deep in the rock, there was a vault. It took hours to open it, but once inside, what they found left them speechless. The weapon wasn't a missile or a bomb. It was a system, a signal transmitter powered by dark energy. A single blast could fry the Vectar fleet's entire network. No shields, no defense. It wasn't brute force. It was science, precision. It turned the Empire's strength into its weakness. Harper stared at the core. We could end this. All of it. But just as they began to prepare the system for extraction, alarms blared through the ship. A Vectar scout had followed them. The Empire had discovered their mission, and reinforcements were on the way. We don't have time, Elias said. We activate it here. Now. But it's not calibrated, Harper shouted. We're too close. The blast. Elias didn't hesitate. Better we burn than let them take it. The team worked fast. The core began to glow, energy pulsing through the walls of the vault. Outside, Vectar ships began descending from orbit. Time was running out. The transmitter needed to be aligned with the Vectar fleet still stationed around Earth to make the most impact, but they were too far away. Then came the message from Earth. "This is Captain Rowe. Vectar fleet just arrived in our orbit. They're preparing for full planetary bombardment." Elias's heart stopped. Earth was out of time. They had to act. "Now, redirect the signal," Harper said suddenly. "We can use the satellite network. It's old, but if we link it to Araka's transmission, we can bounce the signal to Earth's orbit. It'll reach them just in time." The plan was dangerous. The system wasn't meant to handle such a jump. But they had no choice. They linked the vault's transmitter to Earth's satellites. The energy surged through the system. The entire structure began to shake. "Do it," Elias ordered. The signal was sent. Across the galaxy, light flashed from Earth's orbit. The Vectar fleet, massive and powerful, began to fall apart. Systems shut down. Shields collapsed. One by one, their ships went dark, crashing into each other or falling to the surface below. Panic spread through their ranks. They didn't understand what had happened. Their greatest power, control, was gone. On Araka Prime, the vault was collapsing. The team ran for the ship, the ground breaking apart beneath them. Fire and dust filled the sky. They barely escaped into orbit as the entire planet cracked open. They had done it. The flame protocol had worked. When they returned to Earth, the resistance was waiting. People cheered. Families cried. Cities came back to life. For the first time in decades, Earth was free. But Elias knew it wasn't over. The Vectar Empire had been hurt, but not destroyed. The galaxy was watching. And now, for the first time, other races were rising too, inspired by humanity's stand. They had broken the cycle of fear. And they were just getting started. Across the galaxy, the Flame Protocol's blast did more than just destroy a fleet. It shattered the illusion of the Vectar's invincibility. For the first time in generations, the rest of the galaxy saw something they hadn't seen in a long time: hope. Races who had lived in fear, buried under the rule of the Empire, now looked to the stars and whispered the same word: humanity. On Earth, Elias Stone stood quietly as a sea of people cheered outside the underground base. The news had spread like wildfire. The Vectar's fleet around Earth had been wiped out, and the planet was safe. For now. But Elias didn't celebrate. He stood with Harper and the rest of his team in the war room, eyes fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. "We did it," Harper said quietly, arms crossed. "We struck first, and we won." "Yes," Elias replied. "But now, they'll come with everything they have." And he was right. The Vectar Empire was wounded, but not defeated. Across multiple sectors, their high command was in chaos. One of their most powerful fleets had been destroyed, and panic was spreading through their leadership. Many of their generals couldn't believe it. How could a primitive race like humanity bring down something so advanced? But others in the Empire knew the truth. They had seen signs of this resistance rising. They had ignored the warnings. And now, their enemies had found a voice. From the icy moons of the Slavian colonies to the forest-covered world of Marin 6, resistance movements began to rise. The Vectar had always ruled through fear, using overwhelming force to silence anyone who dared resist. But now they were losing that fear. Elias and his team received the first message only 2 days after their return. It came from a hidden base on the planet Jarrell. The message was short, but powerful. "You broke the chains. Tell us how. We are ready to fight." More messages followed. From the insectoid Nilari swarms, from the aquatic peoples of Hollis Prime, even from old mining colonies that had been silent for over a century. The galaxy was waking up. The people were ready. All they needed was a leader, and humanity had just become that. Elias called a meeting with every resistance leader still alive, on Earth and across friendly planets. Some joined through holograms, Others traveled for days to be there in person. The meeting took place in a hidden orbital station, once used for defense, now turned into the heart of the rebellion. "We can't fight this war alone," Elias told them. "But we don't have to." The Vectar made one mistake. They thought they could silence us forever. But now, they've made us stronger. Harper stood beside him, presenting the data they'd recovered from the Vectar. The Flame Protocol wasn't the only secret they'd been hiding. There were other weapons, other relics, places where the Empire had buried dangerous truths, forgotten races, abandoned labs, dead planets filled with old technology that could tip the balance. "Our mission is simple," Elias continued. "We find these relics before they do. We train, we build alliances, and we prepare for the biggest battle this galaxy has ever seen." And so the resistance began to grow. The humans trained other races in guerrilla warfare, taught them how to hide from scanners, how to build ships with scrap metal, how to fight smart, not just strong. Elias led missions to broken worlds, retrieving lost technology that could help arm the galaxy. Harper developed new communication systems, spreading encrypted messages of rebellion to every corner of space. But the Vectar weren't sitting still. Their new High Marshal, a ruthless commander named Vorexel, began planning his response. He didn't believe in control through politics or slow strategy. He believed in fire, in fear, in erasing any world that showed even a hint of rebellion. And his first target was Marin 6, one of the first planets to reach out to the humans. The attack was brutal. Vectar ships rained fire on the surface, turning cities into ashes. The people of Marin 6 tried to fight, but they weren't ready. Their leaders called out to Elias for help, but Earth was too far. The resistance fleet couldn't reach them in time. By the time Elias and his team arrived, it was too late. Elias stood on the blackened soil, surrounded by ruins. Harper scanned the wreckage, eyes full of silent rage. Children, farmers, entire villages. Gone. The Vectar had sent a message to the rest of the galaxy. We still rule. But what the Vectar didn't know was that their attack didn't silence the rebellion. It only lit the fire higher. Elias knelt beside the broken remains of a Marin resistance flag. He picked it up, holding it in his hand. "This is the line," he said. "This is where we stop running. They want us to fear them. No more." Back on Earth, he sent out a new message to every planet watching. A call, not of survival, but of vengeance. They burned a peaceful world. They murdered innocent people. We will not forget, and we will not forgive. Across the stars, the people heard it. The people of Hollis Prime prepared their sea fleets to attack Vectar water bases. The Nilari began tunneling under Vectar cities with bioweapons. Small asteroid colonies launched mining ships refitted with cannons. And for the first time, the Vectar Empire saw what it had feared most: a united galaxy, a final alliance, built not from strength, but from pain, from hope, from the spark humanity had lit. And Elias Stone, once just a soldier of a broken world, now stood at the center of it all. He looked up at the stars from Earth's surface and said quietly, "You wanted war, Vorexel. Then war is coming. And this time, it wouldn't be humanity that burned. It would be the Empire." The stars above Earth were no longer quiet. Vectar warships filled the black sky, their sharp edges glowing red as they hovered in formation. This was it, the final push. The Vectar had sent their largest fleet yet, more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen. Over 100 capital ships, thousands of smaller fighters. And at the front of it all was the new High Marshal, Vorexel, in his dreadnought called the Eye of Silence. He had come to finish what the Vectar had started years ago, to break Earth once and for all. But this time, humanity was ready. In orbit around Earth, a new fleet waited, bigger than before, stronger. Not just human ships, but vessels from every corner of the galaxy. Marin fighters, Hellas water frigates, Nilari tunnel ships with plasma drills, Even former Vectar soldiers who had defected, tired of the Empire's cruelty, now stood against their own kind. The Resistance fleet had one goal: end the Empire. Elias Stone stood on the command deck of the Sol Reborn, Earth's flagship. His eyes were hard, focused. There was no fear left in him now, only purpose. Harper was beside him, running final scans. Her voice was calm, but her hands moved fast across the controls. "They're forming attack lines," she said. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they strike." "Let them," Elias replied. "We've been waiting for this." The plan wasn't simple. They couldn't beat the Vectar with strength alone. Their ships were still superior, their weapons still deadly. But the Resistance had something else: unity, coordination, and the Flame Protocol. During the months after Oraka Prime, Harper and her team had upgraded the ancient tech. It could now send targeted energy pulses, shutting down Vectar systems one by one. But it had to be used carefully. Once the Vectar knew it was active, they'd try to destroy it. That meant the Resistance had one chance, one perfect strike. As the fleets moved closer, Elias gave the order: "All ships, begin the shield sync." Across space, ships lit up with blue lights, their shields linking through shared energy fields. It was something new, something human. Alone, they were weak. But together, their shields became one. It was the symbol of everything the Resistance stood for. Then the Vectar fired. Red beams of energy tore through space, smashing into the outer line of Resistance ships. Explosions lit the sky, but the shield sync held. The ships shook, metal creaked, but they didn't fall. "Now," Elias shouted. "Return fire." Blue lasers and missile volleys answered back, slamming into the Vectar front line. 2 enemy ships broke formation, trailing smoke and sparks. Fighters danced in the chaos, weaving between explosions and debris. The battle had truly begun. Down below, Earth's population watched from bunkers, cities, and mountains. Children held their breath. Elders whispered prayers. But they were not hopeless this time. They knew their warriors were up there, fighting not just for survival, but for justice. On the Eye of Silence, Vorexel watched the battle unfold with cold eyes. He didn't speak. He simply raised one clawed hand, and his officers responded. They launched the second wave. 20 destroyers moved in a curved pattern, aiming to cut through the Resistance's flank. But the Resistance was ready. "Bring the Hallis ships forward," Harper said. The sea fleets from Hallis Prime, specially built for deep ocean pressure, were now modified for space combat. Their armor was thick, their cannons slow but deadly. They moved like whales through space, silent, steady, unstoppable. When the Vectar destroyers hit the flank, the Hallis ships opened fire. The explosions were so bright, they lit the darkness like a second sun. Elias smiled grimly. They didn't expect that. But victory was still far. Vorexel activated his secret weapon, a planet breaker cannon. Built into the Eye of Silence, it could fire a beam powerful enough to destroy Earth's surface in a single strike. It began to charge, energy crackling along its length. Harper's eyes widened. "We have one shot. Flame Protocol needs to hit that cannon before it fires." The weapon was ready, powered by the same dark energy from Oraka Prime. The Flame Protocol could release a pulse strong enough to disable the cannon. But Elias knew what it meant. The signal had to be guided and manually. Someone had to fly close enough to the Eye of Silence to direct the pulse. Elias didn't hesitate. "Prep my fighter." "Wait." Harper grabbed his arm. "You don't have to go yourself." "I do," he said softly. "This war ends today." Elias took off in a black stealth fighter, the core of the Flame Protocol glowing behind him. As the rest of the fleet fought to protect Earth, he flew alone, straight toward the heart of the enemy. Missiles streaked past him. Fighters chased him. But Elias was too fast. He flew low, weaving through debris and enemy fire. The Eye of Silence grew larger in his view. The planet breaker cannon was glowing, seconds away from firing. He locked the signal. "Goodbye, Vorak," he said. He fired the pulse. A wave of blue light burst from his ship, slamming into the eye of silence. The cannon sparked, trembled, and exploded. The blast ripped through the Vectar dreadnought, tearing it apart from the inside. Fire spilled into space. The mighty flagship cracked in half. Elias's fighter was caught in the shockwave. Back on the Sol Reborn, Harper screamed his name, but there was no answer. Silence filled the comms. For a moment, everyone stopped. The Resistance, the Vectar, even the stars seemed to go quiet. Then the Vectar fleet began to retreat. Without their high marshal, without their strongest weapon, they were broken. One by one, their ships turned and vanished into the stars. The battle was over. The Empire had fallen. On Earth, the people poured into the streets. They cried. They laughed. They held each other. The sky was clear now. No more warships. No more fire. Harper stood quietly, tears in her eyes, looking up. A small signal blinked on her console. A distress beacon. From Elias's fighter. He was alive. Weeks later, the Resistance rebuilt. The galaxy came together for the first time in history, not under fear, but under freedom. Statues were raised not to kings or emperors, but to soldiers, to rebels, to people like Elias Stone, who reminded everyone that no matter how strong the chains, they can be broken. And from that day on, the galaxy would never bow again. Humanity had come from the ashes, and they had set the stars free.